We're now being joined now by Mr. Wale Oluwade, who is a management consultant. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Mope.
Should I still be saying Happy Democracy Day to you?
Yeah, we're still in the mood.
We're still in the mood, aren't we? The president's speech yesterday focused a great deal on the economic problems we have faced, and also a plan, seems to have a plan to get Nigerians out of poverty. He acknowledged the role of entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and investors, agriculturalists, and all those who he says are contributing daily to the Nigerian economy. And he's talked a great deal about, getting a lot of people out of poverty. When you look at the president's plan, how convinced are you that if we follow along this trajectory, we could actually, yes, lift 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years?
Thank you, Mokwe. On a lighter note, I told Madam Shehu that there was no acknowledgement of you and I, a couple of weeks, we had discussed here, yes. And I specifically mentioned about, it's not bad borrowing from China,
yes.
But I would rather we learn, get the know-how,
yes.
How China moved 850 plus million people out of poverty in less than maybe 40 years. Now, the president mentioned Indonesia, India. India still has maybe 60, 70 million people, just that Nigeria is #1. Indonesia, the reason why China is important is because what China has achieved is nothing short of a 21st century miracle, Now, that being said...
The president also mentioned that they achieved that under authoritarian rule. And I think he had to bring in the Indian example because it's an example of how a democracy has done it. And it is possible within a democracy.
Of course it is possible. It is possible, but that's not even the point. Now, the president's speech was high on promise, on hope, And of course, the presidency, the office of any president or governor, majorly is to give hope, inspire people, inspire confidence, because that's signaling for investors, for, FDIs and all of that, So on that score, I scored the president maybe 100%. For the first time, I was really inspired by that speech.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
I liked the speech. But it was long on promises, Now, it's not a plan, Malkwe. I beg to differ with you. The speech is not a plan. It's just a speech. My intention, my plan, my vision, but it's not a plan. A plan has everything, the outlines, how to do them, the timelines, what it will take and all of that. So this is not a plan. Because on the interview you and I did, and where I talked about this, I mentioned two things China did. More than two, anyway, but majorly that in the SIP program of this administration, I said there's no master plan. There's no master plan. And secondly, there's no database. Interestingly, the president mentioned a database. Yes. So you keep saying that they actually listen to us. And I'm glad that your program is highly,
Well, we do not know how much of that actually has an influence, but we do know that it's one of the things that, they mentioned in this speech.
I was here twice in 2 weeks, yes. And I mentioned that there must be a data plan. And that the data plan, this data must include the specific number of these poor people. Where are they? What are the skills that they need, or skills that they currently have? Where they're located, and all of that. But the critical aspect that is missing is that there is no plan, and we must have a plan.
Why do you say there is no plan?
There is no plan, Malkwe. Maybe they're working on the plan.
What do you want to see in the plan? Because the president made reference to the social investment program, which, had to deal with the problem of a database. They said that there had been some database, compiled by the World Bank before now. I think compiled by a government with the help of the World Bank, which is one of the things that they had to use to start the social investment program. But they had, one of the challenges they also faced was that problem of a database, which they are now currently compiling. We've heard that before. So when you say that there is no plan, there is a school feeding program. There's a plan to the most vulnerable, I think give 5,000 naira to the most vulnerable, to also help young people who are unemployed, to get them into the job market gradually with the Empower program. What exactly do you want to see in the plan? All these
programs, on this same program I told you, these are ad hoc measures.
They are.
They need to be, holistic. They need to be together. you know, they need to be, mainstreamed into a single plan, and then you follow the implementation. You know, you from one step to the other. That's the plan I'm talking about. What we have, the conditional cash transfers, the trader money, market money, school feeding programs, these are ad hoc measures. You do not lift 10 million people in 10 years out of poverty by ad hoc measures. I am glad the president mentioned, China. China didn't achieve what they achieved through ad hoc measures. And, can
you shed a little more light on what you mean by mainstreaming again?
Absolutely, fantastic. Now, interestingly, someone in Nigeria, a former governor in Nigeria, actually did that. His name is Peter Obi, former governor of Anambra State. What China did is actually, adopting the MDG goals, Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations or World Bank, mainstreamed it into his own plan in Anambra State. And that was how he was able to move people out change the trajectory, of governance in Anambra State. For instance, before Peter Obi became governor of Anambra State was doing maybe 30-something, 34, 35th in WAEC. That's in education, in the education sector. By the time Peter Obi was leaving after 8 years, Anambra State is doing second or third, even currently, sometimes even first. So let me go back to, having the plan. This plan must be holistic, and it's got to go to the grassroots, to the rural, communities. We discussed that here on this program, and then if the president is saying, we'll do 10 million per annum for 10 years, nice, aspiration. But the question also is that doable with current realities? The answer is a big no. I'm not a politician, so I may not use the same kind of words the man who was here before me used, maybe it's a politician. But I'm telling you, it's so long on promise, but it's short on substance, because now, let me also say this, Malkwe. I see in the speech also, I see a philosophical, shift, as it were. Now, hitherto, the president's main mantra, as it were, even though there were 3 main campaign promises, when it came in 2015, insecurity, economy, and anti-corruption. I'm sure every Nigerian knows that even if we woke up the president dead of night, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is anti-corruption. So there are this group of people, that fed into the mind of the president that once you deal with anti-corruption, all of Nigeria's problems just disappears. And so he ran with that for 4 good years. Now suddenly we realize that even if, I'm telling you, Malpe, if you bring Professor Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner in economics, Professor Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, even go resurrect John Maynard Keynes, another master of economics. If you don't deal with this mass poverty, Nigeria can't get out of the woods. Never. Now, so suddenly, I don't know how, but I'm glad that finally our president or the government seems to realize that the number one, because I told you here on this program, 3 existential problems confront not just Nigeria, but the economy. Mass poverty. You cannot have 100 million, close to 100 million people, extreme poor, and then you want to build a nation. How is that going to happen? Because a typical illustration I'll give you for a layman is that you have dead weight. They are not productive. They are not contributing anything. Because how do you build GDP? It is output per person. Every per capita must be producing something. Every Nigerian must be productive. That is how you grow your GDP. And that's why you take it down to the grassroots. Where are the poor living? You go, you meet them there, and sociologists.
So so that you don't lose your train of thought, and we're able to follow you successfully. Yeah. You've talked about poverty being one of the issues.
It is number one issue.
What is the second issue?
Unemployment. Unemployment.
And the third one?
The third one is insecurity. On your program, I don't know why, maybe you forgot. I told you they are conjoined triplets. That's what I used. They are interwoven because they're pulling and pushing each other. Mass poverty is pushing unemployment, is pushing, insecurity. Because you cannot have these extreme poor people, no access to education, no access to healthcare, no access to jobs, no access to decent housing. Just drive around 10, 15 minutes out of Abuja and see where people live. Subhuman conditions. How can they be productive? And then how would you not have crimes?
You are saying that this is long on promise,
absolutely,
but short on plan.
Substance.
Even though you haven't spoken about very clearly as to what the substance you'd like to say is. Mr. Shehu, how do you respond?
Well, let me begin by saying that I think that it is erroneous to assume that the nation's treasury is just going to the market and to the villages and our towns and just throwing money at people. That there is no plan. So if there is no plan for the social investment program, the president said other nations on the continent are coming to copy what we are doing. So what are they coming to copy? To throw money at people? No, there have been studies. There is absolute support coming from World Bank and a lot of donor institutions, including the Ford Foundation and so on. Studies have been made. People had been identified using specified characteristics before you receive this 5,000 naira.
Yeah, but he's saying that the plan is ad hoc. This SIP
is not ad hoc. It's not ad hoc because it is streamlined into the nation's budgetary system. No amount of money is spent on the social investment without first being approved by our budget planners, going to the Federal Executive Council, going through the budget process in the National Assembly, and appropriated. So this is a plan that the administration intends to continue with for a while. Therefore, the thing is that to say it is ad hoc and it is not it is mainstreamed because this is the system that we operate. He, however, needs to redefine, tell us what he exactly expects of the government to do. Whether anyone expects that the government should work outside the budget system, no, that's not conceivable under our own constitution. And so this is on... No, I don't think that's what he's saying. Well, he's here. He can definitely say what he means. But I think what he means is that this cannot be a permanent arrangement. This cash transfers and whatever cannot be a permanent arrangement. It will have to be something that already works through. Yeah, but even in the more advanced countries, yes, people with any hope in life, nobody wants to remain permanently on social security. If there's a job, they list you. And for most people, they struggle to get out of it because it's demeaning itself. So it's not in the best of situations. Is there a plan to get people off that into... as well as the economy expands, yes, and industry is revived and there is more production, agriculture expands, as we're currently doing, you know, people will take up jobs and they don't need to queue up, you know, for stipends at the end of the month. And quickly before he comes in, I know he would have his answer to this. I think that he shouldn't give comfort to people who are corrupt in this country, that President Buhari has abandoned war against corruption. That is absolutely... I was just about to ask you what you made of that observation, that the president's trajectory or his focus now seems to be about lifting people out of poverty and less on the fight against corruption. Well, it is not to in any way suggest that it has been demoted. The president itemized those three cardinals on the basis of which he won election in 2015 and said in the speech that he believes and Nigerians believe that he was not wrong, and that's why they gave him a renewed mandate. However, the president has opened up, reached out to business and to investors, which is good for the economy, and he had made linkages between these elements, poverty, you know, to lack of security in the country. And so therefore it is not reasonable, you know, to give the president credit for scaling up attention on matters of the economy, because it holds the key to resolving a lot of the problems that we are confronted with. Let's take questions from my colleagues in Lagos.
Well, yes, Gaba, I'd like to get some understanding, perhaps if you could shed some light on the thinking of what the president actually means. Number one is that when you say or give those examples of those countries that have lifted people out of poverty, and you talk about 100 million people saying we can do it if certain things are done. So why is it that the president didn't say, this is our target, these are how many people we want to lift out of poverty, this is how we intend to do it, and how is he going to work with states to do all of those?
Okay, You know that this 100 million represents an aspiration. It may be inadequate for some people, but the thing is that I think that the nation needs to be aroused to the need to confront this monster, this challenge of unemployment, and the need to lift people out of poverty. President Buhari will not be in office beyond the next 4 years. So this is not a project that he wants or he can complete. So in effect, it then means that it will require the participation of everyone, the private sector and the state governments. And as he himself has said, state governments needed to do more in the affairs of the country. That to sit down and assume that development can only be generated from Abuja only is a mistake. And I think that, yes, then it answers to your question that state governments have a great part to play in achieving these targets. Would the president say, this is what I will do within 4 years? Well, he has thrown it. It's a challenge to all of us Nigerians. And I think that, so it's up to them, the specialists here, all of them, let them come up with specifics, say, make suggestions. He just credited the government with taking up 1 or 2 things from propositions that he had placed on a platform such as this one. So that's where we are. It's an open government, and it's a government of Nigerians. It's a listening government.
All right, because the thing is, what a lot of Nigerians have always talked about is, look, if any government starts anything that Nigerians think is good, whichever government comes in, they want to see those governments or that government continue as long as it benefits the people. So I think that's a given. I stand corrected. Then states, we've heard them say time and again that they don't have that kind of resources. So the revenue formula, which the center gets far much more. So for those states who think that, look, if something is not done about that formula, how do they expect us to keep? Why won't we come to Abuja to get resources and go back to our state? So is there any such consideration about what to do with those revenue formula?
Well, the issue of revenue formula is a dynamic situation, is an ongoing concern. You know that the party APC is committed in principle to the issue of devolution of power from the top to the lower levels of government. What it then means it will be the only right thing to do in that circumstances is where power is devolved and you give more responsibility to states, they have to be given resources that they need to carry out those responsibilities. But I think that the state governments must begin, and they're being advised all the time to think out of the box, see how they can generate money by which, a system in which, yes, they come cap in hand, begging the center for money to pay salary and pensions is not a sustainable system, and they just got to be more creative. And a lot of states out there are doing this. They're improving their revenue generation. Lagos, Rivers, Kano, a number of states are doing exceedingly well, you know, generating money for themselves, and they don't even wait for, you know, handouts from Abuja to come before they pay their responsibility to their own workers. I imagine that we will expect, in fact, if you read the communique of the retreat that the governors had before they came into office, I think one of the challenges they had themselves resolved to undertake, to carry, is to see ways by which they can generate a lot more money with which to run their own systems.
Let me ask you quickly, Mr. Oluwade, what did you mean, if you can summarize it as quickly as you can, by mainstreaming, and what do you expect to see?
Thank you. Poverty is not a disease. Poverty is a social issue. Now, sociologists have identified social inequality as the mother of everything. You know, they were facing insecurity, unemployment, all of that. Now, the best way, when you have the vicious cycle, as we have in Nigeria, where people are living in extreme poverty, you know, how do you move people out of, how do you get them out of the vicious cycle? Educate them. Education is a leveler. Education is a ladder out of mass poverty. Now, where is education? Where does it begin from? Primary school. Who's responsible for primary school? Local governments. The president, the NFIU came out and said, oh, funds for local government should go directly to them. I supported it. I was on TV networks. I supported it wholeheartedly. But the president cannot do it by fiat. So I expect when I say a plan, that's what I'm talking about. All of these things should be broken down in a harmonized single plan. So the president should sit down with the National Assembly, sit down with the governors and tell them, gentlemen, we have a crisis. We need to devolve power to the states and to the local governments. We need to give complete autonomy to the local governments. We need to review revenue sharing. I told you here last time, Mark, I don't think the federal government, America is a 20 trillion economy. They have 15 ministers or secretaries, as they call them. We have 36 or 42, as the case may be. Doing what? Because, and you told me, you asked me, you said, but since we have a lot of work to do, why should we do it? And I told you, where is the work to be done? The federal government does not control any land. Even though you have funny things like federal government road in Lagos or federal government road in Abeokuta, what does federal government have to do with a road anywhere? Abuja is perhaps the smallest city of the federal government.
The federal government is still responsible for about 20% of roads in the federal
Anyway, Mark, secondly, tied to, so when I say mainstreaming, you know, we don't need to create all these ad hoc bodies. Do you understand? You know, it is still the same system we have through the local government. The local government is the critical area where you develop a nation, because you don't build a nation from the top, you build a nation from bottom up. Now, secondly, I expected the president a gaping hole in that speech, as brilliant as it was, and I give him kudos for that, a gaping hole. The president didn't touch on the population crisis we have. Because see, population and poverty, they go hand in hand.
Well, some people will say he did, but maybe perhaps not directly. It was at the beginning
alluded
of the speech.
to it, yes. You know, but population crisis should not be an allusion. It should be discussed at that level. It should send a signal down. Malcolm, let me tell you something. Let me give you a simple math.
I'm sorry we don't have the time for it. I quickly have to pose this question to Mr. Garba Shehu, because we have also seen a statement of the DSS on it. And you say, the president said, most of the instances of the intercommunal, I think he first of all said, my firm belief is that our people all want to live in peace and harmony with their fellow Nigerians. They desire the opportunity to better themselves in a safe environment. Most of the instances of intercommunal and interreligious strife and violence were and are still as a result of sponsorship or incitement by ethnic, political, or religious leaders hoping to benefit by exploiting our divisions and fault lines, thereby weakening our country. On the tail of that, I mean, not long after that, we saw the DSS releasing a statement talking about, clamping down on those, or, holding those, or warning Nigerians generally to be careful how they use the social media space. They have apprehended some people, and they'll continue to. Some people feel that it's a clampdown on free speech. How do you respond to that?
No, there is a difference between free speech and responsibility in communications. Yes, the president promised, he used the word crackdown, and it is justified. This is a country in which one irresponsible fellow on Facebook lied to citizens in Kaduna State, arising from that falsehood. 50 innocent souls were killed. And everybody confirmed that the story that generated the crisis in that Kasur Magani community was a false story run by. So everybody is doing it.
Is that recently?
This is, yes, last year. So this is going on all over the world. Europe, they are doing it. The UK, the parliament, so the thing is that responsibility must go into these things. Free speech is sacred. Nobody will tamper with that. But freedom is not licentiousness, and it is not the right to cost the next person his or her own right. And that has to be checked.
Just wondering, what more would you like Nigerians to take away, even as this administration continues into its new 4-year mandate? What can they look forward to?
Well, first of all, I will ask that let them trust their president. You know, the president opened his speech with a laborious, discussion on where he's coming from, his career in public service, and the way, all of the things he did, including fighting for the unity of this country. Yet, in the eyes of so many people, he's a suspect as far as the unity of this country. We have to be believing in our leaders so that they are in the right frame of mind to themselves, offer the best that they can in the country. And for us as a people to believe in our greatness. My brother here said this 100 million was not doable. No. The thing is that the president has thrown a challenge to Nigerians. The question to us, how do we get there? And then experts like him will now be brought to the table, and then they'll say, oh, let's break it down. The president aspires to achieve 100 million in 10 years. How do we get there? But to write it off and say not doable, then you accept defeat by not even trying.
No,
this is a country. This is a country that President has listed. South Africa would have been a different.
He's correcting what you said.
I didn't say not doable. I gave a proviso. Quickly.
Before you will definitely have your moment, Mr. Oluwade. Okay. We have to take a moment now. When we come back, we'll also be asking what is the role for states, because the president did encourage them to organize investment summits and look for people to come and invest in their states as well. In just a moment, please stay with us. We have with us to the studio Mr. Garba Shehu, Senior Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. And we also have with us Mr. Wale Oluwade, who is a management consultant. Well, Mr. Oluwade, you had said before that the President didn't quite make, or he only alluded to population. Yeah. But he didn't just make an allusion. He talked about our population. He says our country is a great country. Our population will rise to 411 million by 2050, making us the third most populous nation on earth, behind only China and India. He talks about what else we have. We have water, arable land, you know, and goes on in that speech. And then he comes forward to say, he talks about the task by no means is unattainable. I think he's talking about, the task by no means is unattainable. China has done it. India has done it. Indonesia has done it. Nigeria can do it. These are all countries characterized by huge burdens of population. Isn't that acknowledging the population question or the population issue, problem?
Not from my perspective. And how do I mean? Number one, it's a lie. I'm sorry, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's not true for the president to say Nigeria is a great country. We have the potential to be great. Because the president linked...
But we have been great in the... I mean, I'm not trying to support that. But my point is, he laid a premise for that. I mean, talking about what we have done in the past, where we currently stand, and what the potentials are.
We missed the train station. We missed it. After 1966, we missed it. But let me go back, Malkwe. My perspective on the population, and I will explain it to you and to the benefit of Nigerians very simply. The president says Nigeria is great because by 2050 we'll be 410 or 411 million people, would have added 200 plus million. You know, that's not what makes a country great. It's not the population size. On that paper, I wrote there, on the front page, if you look at it, just this morning, Israel is 8.5 million people.
Yeah, he didn't say that we're great because of our population. He talked about the burden of population.
Let me land, please.
Yeah.
Israel is a population of 8.5. They are producing GDP of 385 billion. The United Arab Emirates, a population of 9.6 million people, their GDP is actually higher than Nigeria's. 9.6 million people. Israel, 8.5 million people. We have 200 million people doing a GDP less than both countries.
Okay.
Do you follow my...
Those are the challenges that we have.
That's not just that.
Yeah.
So do you now see how the population is critical? Because let's assume for a moment that a magic happens and the president is able to do 10 million, lift 10 million Nigerians out of, 10 million per year. Yes. So let's assume that for 2019, 2020, president by some magic, is able to move 10 million people out of poverty.
More like.
By a miracle, is able to move them out of poverty. The 90 million poor people, what are they doing? They're reproducing. And our population is reproducing at 3%, 3 plus, but let's use 3%. 3% of 90 million people is what? So you are removing 10 million, you're adding 2.7.
He talked about the role for state, and I want us to quickly address that. He says nationwide development cannot occur from Abuja alone. It must occur at state, and government cannot do it alone. He says, I therefore implore all state governments, especially those with large rural economies, to aggressively solicit investments in your state, invest in developing human capital, reducing bureaucracy and corruption,
if you notice my comments
hosting and attending investment summits, and improving the ease of doing business.
I wrote brilliance there because I believe the president, you know, the federal government has little role in developing a nation, apart from this grand plan, this audacious, you know, vision. That is the role of the of a president or a federal government. Where development takes place, building economies, growing the nation, is at the grassroots, at the states and at the local governments. That's where it takes place. Primary health care, primary education, secondary education.
So you're happy that his speech touched on it?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Do you think that the president is going to be galvanizing, just quickly, these are your closing comments now, do you think the president is going to be galvanizing governors to do something, to do more, maybe through a national plan of some sort?
Oh, he's already galvanized, because in that same speech, he talked about the assemblage of this country's finest people who will come and give the nation the best that it deserves. So
I hope
we're getting there.
I hope it does. But that's another brilliant point, and I hope it does.
Well, I think Nigerians, it's a wait and see right now. It's a game of wait and see, and we'll definitely see how that will come out. I think we can only wish the president the best, because if he does well, we all get to do well. We've been speaking with Mr. Garba Shehu, Senior Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, and we've also been speaking with Mr. Wale Uluwade, who is a management consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for coming to Sunrise this morning.